as always, we did a social issue, you know, where we discussed what's been raging in the media space, press freedom. Wednesday, we did a book review, Not This Widow, with the lovely Dillis, you know, a book that I thoroughly enjoyed and highly recommend. And then on Thursday, we continued with a press freedom conversation where we had the legendary Harinata in the studio. That was yesterday. And, you know, again, great inspirational conversation. This evening is our personality profiling edition of the show. And this evening, I'm sure you can tell how excited I am, right? I'm excited. The lady that I have in the studio with me, it is the kind that I like, you know? The kind that I like. And you'll find out for yourself in a few minutes. I won't talk too much. Let's watch this short clip about her. When we come back, you meet her, and then we dive into the conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I'm from the United States. I live specifically in Los Angeles, California. I'm originally from the state of South Carolina, which has big alliance with Africa and Africans. I'm the director of an organization called USA for Africa.
Marcia Thomas, Executive Director, USA for Africa. Marcia has a long career working with international organizations. She has worked with USA for Africa, the organization that was established to distribute the proceeds from the song We Are the World. She has worked with Oxfam America as Deputy Director of Programs. She was a consultant on the Jubilee 2000 Debt Relief Campaign, providing networking and outreach services for the campaign's UK office in the US. Marcia was a founding board member of the National Summit on Africa, Africa Society, and is presently on UCLA's James S. Coleman African Studies Center Advisory Board. She was a member of the Pacific Council on International Policy. Marcia has a Master of Arts in Education and worked in the Boston public school system during the 1970s when the system was under a federally mandated desegregation order.
That's been driven by the desire of young people on the continent to make a better future for themselves. I want everyone to know about Africans Rising. We want you to join, but more importantly, we want you to become part of the movements that exist in your own countries to elevate Africa and Africans. And Africans Rising is a rallying call to get all Africans to know that you have a responsibility to make a better life.
Welcome back from that. So you know exactly who our guest for this evening is. Marcia Thomas. You know, when as kids we dream of making impact in the world, of doing something significant, of being useful, you know, of our existence meaning something to this world. Every now and then you meet people who can say that I'm doing that, and this is, you know, how I feel about you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's an honor to meet you.
I'm humbled to be here. Thank you.
Let's go right to the basics. Let's go all the way there. What was childhood like for you?
Well, I have to say that one of the most fortunate things that happened for me in my life is that I grew up with my grandparents. And as you all know, the grandparents have a very significant role in raising the children. And my grandmother had instilled in me the person that I am today. But I grew up in a place called Anderson, South Carolina. South Carolina, as you know, is the state that probably maybe 75 to 80% of the Africans that were brought to the United States in slavery were brought in through the port of Charleston. So South Carolina is a very significant place in the life of Africans in the Americas. And so I didn't know a whole lot about Africa growing up, but I definitely understood the importance of being black in the United States as a result of growing up in South Carolina.
You know. Right. So at what point were you introduced to Africa?
I was introduced to Africa in the late 60s and the early 70s when the Black Panthers were all being arrested, and they were all going into exile and one of the major Panthers ended up in Algeria. And so we just learning about that, and what they were doing. And Algeria, Africa, so it's like, why would they go to Algeria? Where would they go to Africa? And then shortly after that, a gentleman named Randall Robinson that was very heavily involved in the apartheid movement produced a lot of material and books, and I started to read about things. And I just said, wow, I don't know anything about Africa except for, most of the older people where I grew up didn't want to be African because it represented pain and misery.
Right.
But when I went to college, a little small state school in Boston, I met a couple of Ethiopians, and they talked so much about how much they loved Ethiopia. And I said, well, why did you leave Ethiopia if you love it that much? And they said, well, you should read about why people leave Ethiopia and learn about it. I also had an opportunity to work on a part-time job while I was in college, to work with some Haitians. And they were talking about how much they loved Haiti. And I found out that Haitians are Africans. And as I started to run into all of these little instances where I was running into Africa, I said, well, maybe one day I'll be able to actually go to Africa. And without ever thinking about it, how do you do that, So, so I just started. I joined the Black Students Association, and at the college I was going to, which had some Africans in it, and a couple of the professors at the little small state school I went to were South African, and they helped us with the Black Student Association and making the connection with Africa, it just sort of built as it went along. And when I ended up, after I got out of school, and I ended up working for the Boston Public Schools,
Right.
In the forced busing situation, which was known as desegregation, which is not integration. The schools were not integrated; they were desegregated, which means that all the black kids were sent to white neighborhoods.
Right.
And so,
I think my first time hearing about that was from Michelle Obama.
yes,
She speaks about that quite a bit.
it was a very
Right.
it was a tragic time, because in Boston, one of the most prominent neighborhoods that was anti-black anything was the Irish neighborhood, which was in a community called South Boston, and poor black kids were being sent to a neighborhood which is poor white people, and they were being terrorized, trying to just go to and from school, which they were being forced to go to. So, so I ended up with that, and out of that, it was just so draining trying to be supportive and be a part of that, that I ended up deciding that I was going to leave that job, and I went to California. And a couple of years after I was in Los Angeles, I got a call about the Olympics. I worked for the 1984 Olympics, and then I met lots of Africans, because I was the head of athlete registration. And even though the registration process generally happens in the countries where the athletes are based, the African groups and the countries had small representation. So when they would never get their stuff done ahead of time, so they would actually come to the registration office and fill out their forms. So I got to meet even more Africans, and it just kept building. I was like, well, one of these days I'm actually going to go to Africa, because I'm meeting these Africans and I'm looking at these people and they're like, well, they look just like us, and we had similar everything, So shortly after the Olympics, I got called about the folks that did We Are the World were looking for some people to work on a big project, and it was a domestic project called Hands Across America. So I started working for Hands Across America. And then when the project ended, the USA for Africa asked me if I'd be interested in working for the main organization, which is We Are the World folks. And I got hired as the director of administration, because that was my specialty, organizational management. Yeah. And then within a couple of years, the then director decided he wanted to leave. And he recommended me for the job because I actually knew more about running the organization than anybody. And in 1988, I made my first trip to Africa. My first trip to Africa was to Cameroon. Cameroon.
How was that like? Let's stay here for a little bit, and we'll come back to working with USA for Africa.
Well,
how was that like? Was it?
I mean, I was so excited and everything, right. And but I think. You know how you hear these stories about people who decided they went to Africa and every bad thing that could happen to them happened to them?
No.
Yes, I had a series of those.
Oh, dear.
That was during the year that Cameroon was, they had turmoil. And it was a curfew. The flight I took from London was late, so we got in after the curfew. So when the cab is taking me to the hotel for the evening, we got the soldiers jump out onto the road, and they start they're speaking local language, but I can tell that they're fussing at him about you know better. And I said, so I'm asking the driver what's going on. He says, well, we're not supposed to be on this road. I said, then why did you?
Then why are we on the road?
Why are we on this road? And nobody at the airport, any of that stuff, So anyway, the next thing I know, they turn to me and they ask, where are you from? So he said, show him your passport. So I pulled out my passport, and then the soldier says, an American.
Right?
Yeah. And then he says, why are you on this road? I said, look, I just got off the plane. I don't know anything about this. Right. The driver no one ever said anything. And so he let us go on to the hotel. And when I get to the hotel, I said, when we were communicating with you about staying here, why did you at least indicate that there was a curfew? Right. And even the airline people didn't say anything. So that was the first instance. Then the next day, I go to the conference, and it was supposed to be simultaneous. There's French and English, and the interpreters didn't show up. So it's all in French. But the bigger issue was when during a break at the conference, they did find one young lady who actually spoke English, and she was assigned to be with me, so to help me. So she says, well, let's go to the market so you can see what an African market looks like.
Right.
And we get out to the market, and somehow there's something happens at the market, and all the soldiers jump out again. And it just so happened I'm right near them, and they're all putting their guns up to everybody. And I'm like, what is it in this country? Everywhere I go, they're pulling out guns.
That's handing out.
So anyway,
wow.
And then the last part of this story, in terms of all the things that could possibly happen, well, the second to the last is in the hotel that I was in.
Right.
Actually, I ended up in the capital of Cameroon because the flight flies into Douala, in the capital. And I'm in a hotel. And it turns out it's the hotel where they're having negotiations with the president and his administration and the rebels that are happening in that hotel. And I'd gone up to my room, and they supposedly had sent people up on all the floors saying, don't get on the elevator, don't get on the elevator. But I didn't know that. It happened while I was in my room. So I come down and I come down to go down to the lobby. The elevator door opens, and the president is standing there with all the military, and every gun that was there was all pointed into the elevator. And the manager of the hotel sees me, and he runs over, and he tells them, she's a guest. And they're like, well, why is she in the elevator? And he says to me, I said, well, I didn't know I shouldn't be in the elevator. And so he grabs me and pulls me out. And I said to him, what is this about these? Everyone's pulling guns out on me, And
wow.
And I'm just fortunate that I didn't get shot, And he said, we sent people up, but obviously you were in your room, you didn't know it. But he said, well, that was the president. And I said, okay, but but I didn't do anything to the president. So anyway, so
Wow.
I mean, I could laugh about it later.
I was about to say that.
And then the final thing was,
Wow.
I get to the airport to leave, and of course they bumped me off the flight to Paris, because I came back to the U.S. via Paris. So which was a big thing that used to happen back in the 80s. You know, they look down the list. They have the flight is overcrowded. They see an English name, and I'm a woman. They just bumped me off the flight, and I had paid for the ticket and all of this. So the fortunate thing again, I always had something that saved me, was I rode to the airport from the hotel with all the flight attendants and the airline crew,
Right.
and they saw what was happening to me, and they came over and they rescued me, and they told the people she put her back on this flight and everything, and I thanked them and everything, and they said, "Don't." I said, "But why would they take my seat away?" And they said, one of the flight attendants says, "Sometimes it happens."
It happens. So, I mean, after all of this, as an introduction to Africa,
Yeah.
why do you keep coming back? I'm curious.
When I got back to the States, and you know, I'm working for USA for Africa. This
Yes.
is my first trip, and a number of the people who had not had Africa experience all said, "Well, I guess you're not going to go to Africa ever again." I said, "Absolutely, no, I'm not. I am going to go to Africa again." And they said, "Well, why would you do that after such a bad experience?" I said, "The one thing that I recognized is that everywhere I went and everything that happened to me, it happened to Africans. So
Right.
it wasn't like I was being targeted."
Right.
And I said, and when I talked with some of the women, they would say, "Well, you know," and I said, and I don't want this to represent why I would not go to Africa.
Right.
I said, it's like going to New York City and getting your pocket picked and getting robbed and saying, "I'll never go to New York again."
Right.
I said, no, I can't do that. This cannot be the only thing that is my lasting memory of Africa.
Right.
And I said, and then the other thing that I learned on that experience is that when you're going to travel someplace that you've never been before, you have to do your own homework.
Research.
Because the program staff was supposed to have told me about a lot of that. And they just said, "Well, we didn't think you would encounter that kind of activity." And so I learned that if you're going to go to Africa, you got to be prepared to know where you're going and what's happening locally.
There.
Yeah.
Now we've spoken about the West, I hope.
Yeah.
All of your experiences in Africa.
Yeah.
Let's go to your best experience.
That was, I had one other one, but by that time, you know, I can handle handle it better.
Right.
You know, in Maputo, we had a group from USA for Africa, other staff people. We had one young lady who spoke Portuguese as our interpreter. So we're at the hotel and we decided we want to take a walk, and we you know, we're just walking down the streets and stuff, and we saw a bookstore. So we go in the bookstore and they had a map of the city with the street names on it. And so we're just following the map and everything, and it turns out we end up on the street where the then president lived, and we were walking on the side of the street of his house, and all of a sudden the security all jump out and want to know why are we on this side of the street, and we're like,
Because it's a street.
and
As far as we are concerned.
and so the young lady that speaks Portuguese finds out that everyone knows not to walk on this in this
Right.
block, not to walk on this side of the street,
Right.
except for us.
Right.
And they saw us with this map, and they thought we were plotting for something. And they said,
Right.
"Where did you get that map? Where did you get that map?" We said, "We bought it at the bookstore here in Maputo." And they said, "It's got all the street names on it." I said, "Yes, it's a street map." And one of the soldiers said, "I've never seen a street map of Maputo." And we were cracking up, you know. So we went to the other side of the street, and
Right.
we're like, they took the map from us.
I mean.
Yeah. And so that was the last time I had that kind of experience. And again, but it was an eye opener, because that meant that even residents of Maputo, who are Mozambicans, can't walk on that side of the street either.
Right.
So so we're not being asked to do something that
out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
This is very regular. I need the best experience though.
Yeah.
So that what's been your best experience here?
Oh man, I've had so many good experiences.
I like that.
In Africa. My best experience. Oh, if I had known, I'd think about that. I'd say that my best experience was being in a village in Senegal, where we had supported the building of some wells, and it was specifically for the women because they were having to walk so far, and so we go there, and it's a small experience, but it was best because it was reflective of how the impact that it had. Well, when we got there and we're sitting around, and the women they're preparing food and stuff, and so they're explaining that I'm the director, and one of my staff people is speaking French, and to one of the French speakers, and he's translating, and then it comes back to us, and he says, the women want to know, how does a woman like you get a man's job? And I cried. I said, well, what makes this a man's job? And they said, well, when they looked at your name and they saw the Thomas, they thought you were a man. And so when they saw that you were a woman, they were just so excited to meet you that it shows that a woman could actually get a big job like this. And they said, because your organization gave them money, and they'd never had a woman be involved in that. And so I said, well, that in itself, I said, I'm honored. I said, I'm honored, but believe me, there are lots of women that have jobs like this.
That are directors.
Yeah, that are directors and have jobs like this. And your children, your daughters, they can get jobs like this as well. And so, so those kinds of experiences are some of my best experiences.
You had me as I've had so many. And the fact that it took you a while to even pinpoint, I'm happy. I have my answer.
Okay.
I have my answer. Let's talk about your work for USA for Africa. Let's talk about, what you talked about just now. Actually going into these communities and making impact.
Believe it or not,
I want us to stay on the impact.
Yeah, the impact
of this. So, let's talk about that for a minute. What are some of the programs that you do, and how impactful are these programs for the people who live in these communities?
I mean, over the last 25, 30 years that I've been involved with USA for Africa, we've probably done every kind of project. It started out with emergency humanitarian, which is because of the famine in Ethiopia and East Africa, moved to the development, then long-term development. But and then we started what we have continued to focus on, which was women, and doing projects that were targeting African women's development, African women's development. And we started activities because we started to realize that any community that you wanted to help and impact, you have to start with the women, because they're responsible for generally what happens in the community. I mean, they may not be the leader of the communities of the villages, but they're the people who make the families work. They're the people who make the communities work. And when the women's life gets better, everybody else's life gets better. Right. And so we've continued to target supporting women's activities. Now, young people, and so we've funded everything from education, IT, water, agriculture, health, any kind of project that's out there. I mean, here in Ghana, we have a project. We have a couple of projects that we've done, but we've supported them for the last 2 or 3 years. It's a woman who has an IT training project for girls and women who have to teach them skills, and it's run by the Saranko Foundation, and the woman herself who started it did it because she said She had a supportive father who pushed her to if she wanted to be in IT, but she saw just trying to aspire how difficult it was to get past the barriers. So we do mostly things that start with, that have a women focus, and women and young people now. And so we have an IT project. We just supported and put some funds into a project that's going to start in the north, up in the Shea Butter District, where the women who do this, who all make the shea butter and pick it and put it together, can't actually make a living off of it because it's not processed. They're competing with.
It's still in its raw state.
Yeah, it's in its raw state. So they're helping them create a collaborative, and the collaborative is going to train them on how to process it better, package it better, and to actually create a marketing effort and have them to understand how do you sell your product and how do you compete, and so.
So essentially, adding value to what they have, so
yes.
they can make more.
Yeah.
I love that, and it's not just in Ethiopia. I'm here in Ghana. Where else?
Ghana, Uganda.
Right.
Uganda, we have a project. We've been supporting this women's group. It's a mentoring group for young girls and girls' education. But they, for the last couple of years, have been really targeting rural areas where women are not being allowed to even eat the kind of get the kind of nutrition that they need, because they have a problem with the babies dying in childbirth because the women are not strong, malnutrition, and then the babies are born malnutrition because they have this culture, this tradition where women are basically not allowed to eat protein. They cook it for their husband, but they're not allowed to eat chicken, eggs.
No, these are very good women.
Yeah.
I would cook it, and stuff a few my mouth before it comes out. Before I put it on the plate.
They're not allowed to go to school, and so we've been funding a mentoring program that has been systematically changing the mindset. Right. And it started with them getting the king of that area to agree and understand why the women are not producing healthy babies, and then why the girls need to go to school. And so it's that kind of stuff. And we still do water, and we still do
that is taking me straight to Oxfam, but I want us to take a break.
Okay.
When we come back, we'll speak about your work with Oxfam.
Okay.
And come back to USA for Africa.
Okay.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, and learns new things. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, and gets back home. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, gets back home, and helps his mom. Phew. That's why every day he needs his cup of Milo, filled with the nutritious goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa. Milo, the energy to go further.
From Nestle.
This advert is FDA approved. Every day he has a drink filled with malt. Every day he has a drink filled with malt and milk. Every day he has a drink filled with malt, milk, and cocoa. Every day he needs the nutritious goodness of Milo. Milo, the energy to go further.
Welcome back. Welcome back from that break. If you are just joining in this evening, we are in conversation with the Executive Director, USA for Africa, Messiah Thomas. Right. And before we left for the break, I just introduced your work with Oxfam. If you would just briefly highlight that for me. And you worked with Oxfam America
yes,
as Deputy Director of Programs.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because I did that stint with Oxfam America after having worked for USA for Africa for a few years.
Right.
And even though a number of things had happened, and I felt that I had, because I had no real African experience other than just hearing, just the encounters I had with it. So I'm
sure that was helpful.
It was helpful, but what it the reason I decided that I would do a little stint with Oxfam America is because even at being at USA for Africa, I was always coming up against, development people who, had systems and programs and things that they had been involved with, and seemed, mostly people who were not black and not Africans, who were all saying that they had a better understanding because they understood Africa and everything. So when the opportunity to work for Oxfam America happened, because USA for Africa was a created construct, it didn't come out of being an organization that evolved from being involved with Africa. It was a result of something that happened in Africa. So I felt that, well, maybe I should go and work for a real development organization so I felt that I had better credibility.
Right.
And so the opportunity happened, and I left USA for Africa for a couple of years, and I went to Oxfam America.
Right.
And after the first year, I realized that I didn't need to be there to get credibility.
Right.
I got a better understanding of how the system works, and that the whole thing around development in Africa is really about money. And the organizations, the big ones, had control of the money because they were in partnership with the government, other big donors, and but they weren't necessarily focused on the people. Right. It was, well, we're going to do this project. They would go in, they did, and they would hire local people to work on the project, but they would get no credit for it. They weren't helping them to learn how to do something for themselves. And then I just felt like, well, I don't need credibility to do what I had already started to experience, which is that if you support the efforts and you encourage, the local people, you put your ideas together about what you need to fix your own community, and not have outsiders coming to tell you how to implement your projects, what needs to be fixed, that you're poor and you're not poor, you just don't have the same resources that they have. I said, I kind of like our approach, which we had the flexibility to support things directly, and we didn't have to go through the gatekeepers. So I went back to USA for Africa and continued to do what had started, which was that we were funding Africans directly.
Directly, without the whole savior, right. Okay, so now let's talk about Africans Rising. I love the name, Africans Rising. The name alone, says a lot. Let's talk about Africans Rising. Tell me exactly what it is that you do.
Well, I got called when Africans Rising was being created in 2016. I was actually living in Ghana at the time.
Really?
I still worked for USA for Africa, but you know how we're working virtually now and remotely? I actually still had my job, but I did it fromGhana.
That's amazing.
I had an office over at.
Where did you live? Briefly.
I lived in, and I still, when I come, I still stay with my Ghana family. Ayoshi.
Where?
With this truly a working class community. I met them when they were in Toronto, the family, and they were moving back. The husband, whose name, of course, is Kofi, and he's an eye guy, and he had always dreamed of coming back, opening an eye clinic, but the clinic would be driven mostly around being able to provide eye services to people who couldn't afford it.
Good stuff.
Sites for Africa.
Sites for Africa. Listen, Africans Rising. Let's talk about Africans Rising. Let's talk about Africans Rising.
So anyway, Africans Rising, the organizer of it, the founder, Kumi Nardo, who was a South African, and who's he's an activist. He had gotten, when he was trying to put together a governance group, several of the people he had contacted, they said, he asked them, can you think of anybody else who you think would be very helpful for something that was actually being created?
Right.
And they gave him my name. And so he contacted me here in Ghana, and said that they were trying to create this effort, and what it was about and everything. I said, so this is a civil society organization? He said, absolutely not. He said, well, why would you ask that? I said, because if it was, I was going to say no, automatically.
Why though?
Because I didn't necessarily have experiences. NGOs and some constructs are so busy being in the business of being NGOs. I didn't always think that they actually had the best interests of the communities that they supposedly were servicing. And I'm not saying that NGOs are all bad, but and civil society groups, I saw them to some degree were busy creating and building themselves, and weren't always including the ground, the people on the ground. The grassroots is where the core of Africa is.
Right.
And so I said, well, I'm not going to join and be a part of the creation of another civil society. I said, there's enough of them already. They just need to do more. Right. He said, no, this is a movement.
Right.
And I said, okay, and what does that mean? And he said, a movement, and it was inspired by young people. I said, seriously? And he said, so he explained to me how it came about, how 300 or 400 young people all showed up in Arusha, Tanzania. 300 or 400 of them showed up.
300 or 400 people just showed up
in Arusha, Tanzania, without being sent a ticket to get there, because the word had got out that there was this attempt to create a movement that was going to be charged, manned, and driven by young people. And they wanted. So
it's truly Africans rising.
Yes,
in the truest sense of the word.
Because the motivation was that there was a group of young people who were just sick and tired of not having the Africa that they had been promised. And that's how it kind of got started. The Africa where they could live. The communities would get better. And their contributions and that the politics, the money, all the issues that were just impacting, them not having jobs, they just felt that there was nobody looking after the interests of the future. And depending on what country they were in, just their attempt to try to get some attention to the needs that they have, And
what do we do? I mean, we are dissatisfied with this Africa that we have.
Yes.
We have a dream of what should be. It's not. So we've put ourselves together. What do we do now? What does Africa Rising do?
African Rising is a Pan-African movement whose sole purpose is to elevate and to support and certainly help organize movements, because the change that needs to happen starts on the ground. And at the local level, movements are there. You have to be responsible for creating your own movement, but you need help. You need some organization. Maybe you need a little training and whatever. And its whole effort is to help movements that are already existing and those that want to exist to evolve and be able to have the impact that they have, starting that they want at the community level, which is start the changes that you want to see in the community that you live in. Organize, get other people to this. If you want to fix something, get something done in your community, you don't like the political leadership in your community, then run for that office and get them out. You can get that position, because the people who will support you are the masses in your community. Whoever the man or the woman that is the local MP or whatever they call them, the regional, if you want that person out because that person isn't doing anything to help you, then you don't have to become a politician. You just vote them out, so so the leadership group that was created for the, even though it's a movement, in order to not get in trouble, it has to have some sort of construct that's that's legitimate.
Right.
So the dilemma was, how do you create a Pan-African movement without it being an NGO or a civil society group? And so that's what the governance group was put together to try to help create. And so in the beginning, I said, I'm not sure that I want to be a part of this. And then, because I didn't really have confidence in it, that it was real. And then I started checking around, and I also checked with the people who had given him my name, and they said it's real. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And they need people like you to help the young people who know how to make things happen. And I signed on. And at first I was just a member of the governance committee, which was called the International Working Group at that point. And then I ended up being recommended to become one of the 2 co-chairs that came out of that group. And I've been a co-chair since then. But my tenure is about to end, though. But they keep telling me that I may not be in the governance committee, who now has a different name. It's called the Coordinating Collective. But they said they're not going to let me leave. And
I wonder why.
And so
I wonder why.
The inspiration and that I get from seeing these young folks who are willing to do whatever's necessary to put a situation in front, get on the line, get out front in things, to go and show solidarity. Africans Rising's main objective is to get the continent to be in solidarity with itself, and understand that your local issue is probably similar to the local issue in the next village. You just don't know about it. But when something happens, the way that you create unity is when you stand up to say that that's not right, and show solidarity. And so it also works at the level of government to make sure they know what the rules are. And so when they write to government, when they demand meetings and all of that on behalf of the people of the community that they're representing, they don't go speak for them. They bring the leadership from that community. Now, we've got a meeting for you. We'll be there with you. But you now need to start to speak for yourself. So Africans Rising's effort starts with the idea that all Africans want peace, justice, and dignity.
Peace, justice, and dignity. All the good stuff.
Yep, all the good stuff. That they're willing to work, they're willing to earn. Young people just want to be able to know that they can have a future and that they don't have to leave Africa to have a life.
To make that happen. Now let's talk about African Liberation Day.
Oh, African Liberation.
Let's talk about African Liberation Day. Do we have any plans?
Believe it or not, I actually won't be here on African Liberation Day. I will be back in the States. But I think there's close to 300 different events that are going to happen around the continent. And African Liberation Day starts in East Africa, which is where the sun rises first, goes across the continent, and it ends in the United States, in Oakland, California, which is the farthest point. So the first event and the last event. There's a little bit of everything. But also the main focus of African Liberation Day is for people to get a chance to express themselves, whether that's culturally or whether it's in sharing capability. But it's also a day that is spent finding creative ways to pass along information about who you are as an African. The history. You have history. You have capability. Africans have done everything, and we can achieve anything. We just don't know how capable and all the successes. And also to connect that if Africa doesn't survive, the world as we know it will not survive.
Absolutely, I completely and totally agree with you.
So African Liberation Day is a day to be proud to be African. It's also a day that they do a lot of events with young kids around. It's painting or dancing, but it's always tied to learning something about Africa and who you are.
Right.
So it's always an exciting day.
Right.
But the thing about African Liberation Day, it has themes, but the themes are for the year is our health, our lives, our future.
Our health,
our
lives,
and
our future. Our health, our lives, our future.
Because
it's
the health,
isn't it?
the health
Really
right now,
acts.
because of the
COVID and all of
how
that.
Things are even being further impacted.
Right.
And then, our lives,
Right.
And then the future. The young people are the future. And that, and that represents them,
Right.
So they're incredible. They're incredible. I mean, this is a group that started with no money, and even though the objective is that Africans will support Africans Rising, we've been able to find donors who in the beginning, were kind of iffy, but as a result of some of the things that have happened globally, I mean, the George Floyd incident in the United States actually had people wanting to give Africans Rising money, because the issue of racial equity, gender, all of that is a part of their agenda.
Right.
And so now they've been able to get more support, but they're not saying that they don't want support to come from outside to do the work. But they're trying to get Africans to understand that you should be supporting Africans Rising.
This is about us. Let's do this for us.
And you should be leading the charge to
Right.
support,
Right.
not Africans Rising, the entity, but Africans Rising in your local communities,
Locally.
wherever you live, wherever
Right.
you work.
Right.
So that we've got this goal that to get 1 million Africans, and they can be in the diaspora as well, to give $1 a month for a year, which will end up being like $12 million.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
And to get high dollar Africans to also recognize that, just give a little to helping to make change happen.
We owe it to ourselves to do that, don't we? We owe it to ourselves to do that. Now, this is what I would say, and this has to do with the We Are the World track, which was such a huge success globally.
Yes.
We play the song here in Ghana on almost all the TV stations. Everybody can sing along. I can sing, from the beginning. Everybody knows the words. Huge success. And the beauty of that project, do you call it a project first of all?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So the beauty of that project for me is the fact that we chose to use music. We chose to go that way. We are used to the hardcore, and they work, they are fine, but sometimes you realize that using alternative means as well, like music, perhaps, and in this instance I would say it tends to be more effective, or was more effective. I'm wondering where the idea came from, first of all.
Well,
who wrote the
actually,
song, who put everybody together.
The idea
Right.
of doing something around the famine, which is how it all got started.
Right, in Ethiopia.
Came from Harry Belafonte. Harry Belafonte, who is an artist, of course, and he's been an artist all his life,
Right.
but he's also been an activist for the responsibility that artists have to use their art to address social needs and to help create social change.
Right.
So when he saw the British group, the Band-Aid folks do the song and everything,
Right.
he contacted some people in Los Angeles and said, well, we should do a concert or something. And then Quincy Jones was called, and Quincy Jones said, I think a song would be a better way to get people involved than a concert. And at that time, he was a major producer for Michael Jackson.
Right.
And the other organizer, a guy named Ken Cragen, was the manager of Lionel Richie. And they had said, well, we'll write a song. And Michael's inspiration for this song came from from the sense that, you know, we are the world people. We are the people. We make what exists in the world. And that's why the song is still very popular, because there's nothing in that song that ever says anything about Africa. Everyone just knows it was created around Africa.
Right.
But we are the world just reminds us that we have, you know, lend a hand, help each other, love each other, and it's our responsibility to make a better day.
You know, did you envisage it being this, you know, huge success?
Well, as a matter of fact, the organizers of it, because I did not work for them when they did We Are the World. I started working for them the year after they did We Are the World.
Because I know that you were responsible for the distribution of the, you know, all the proceeds that came in. So redistributing
at that point,
Africa.
because I became the director a year and a half after they did the song. A lot of the money had been done on emergency, but what happened was the organizers of this activity, which then led to the creation of the organization, never thought that maybe a couple of years, and then everything would be done. Not that the problem would be, but it would be done. The money would be distributed, and when they set out to do this, they realized that they actually needed folks who knew what they were doing. But everyone just anticipated that maybe 10, 20 million and give it away. And
so how was the distribution, if you don't mind my asking? How do you decide where to give what? And how much? And what does it go into?
Back when we had millions and millions of dollars, we did what was necessary, which we hired people who actually knew about Africa, as program people, whose responsibility was to go, either they already had knowledge on the ground, or to go into Africa and to go beyond Ethiopia, because in the beginning it was very East African. To go beyond Ethiopia, because it says USA for Africa, and to start to raise the visibility and to find local or NGO types, people who were doing community work, and tell them that we want to support them. And so a lot of the organizations that exist now got some of their first grants from USA for Africa. We got criticized for that because the big international group says that, everybody's corrupt, so the money's going to go to waste. And I was the director behind that when that started, and I said, they send me letters, write me up, call me, and I said, well, we're going to take a chance anyway. I said,
let's see how it goes.
We're going to take a chance. Because having grown up in the South in the United States, we grew up knowing that if any improvement that you wanted in your community, it was your responsibility. Because even though you paid taxes, they were not going to come in and improve anything in your community. So if you had a problem, you figured out, people would come together, organize, and fix it, So that's where I learned that whenever there's an issue at a community level, it's the community's responsibility to take the lead on fixing it, not to have someone come from someplace else and tell you what to do. And no. So we started funding indigenous organizations, and some, like I said, some 25 years or so later, we don't get millions of dollars, but We Are the World still sells.
It's still an amazing.
It still sells. It's really funny because I was out. I did not know at the time that that's who I was going to meet. But the KSM that does the show here, I know his wife, and so I went because we had given her some money for a little small training projects that she's trying to develop, and he was there, and I told him I was going to be doing an interview, and he says, well, yeah, that's where I do my show and everything. But it's a small world. But even though she's done lots of work for bigger groups and all of that, she, because what we do now is we give out small grants and gap grants, we have such impact. Like I told you, the Saranco, the IT project, that young lady has helped more girls who were not even in school and couldn't get jobs even if they had graduated from high school, these girls, they've taken off. You know, she's got a cadre of girls, and she's doing everything with them, from not only teaching them coding, web development, whatever, you know, marketing and all of that, but they track them, they stay with them, and they help them in terms of being able to manage and survive in the workplace, which is very hostile for young girls and women. And she gets called to do training of women, just to teach women who can't even read or write, but they need to learn how to do basic computer skills in order to be able to do something in business, just to learn how to track your products, all of that. So she does. So that's a great project. The I project, you know, it was started with the purpose that no person would ever be turned away because they can't pay. So, you know, people come from 5, 6, 7 hours away to come to get their eyes done, mostly women.
Mostly
because
women.
they don't have,
and that's Kofi's project, of course.
That's Kofi's project.
Kofi's project.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, because our time is up, unfortunately.
Yes.
You know how the time runs when you're having fun. Let's talk about your Ghanaianness for a minute.
Okay, my
Your
Ghanaian.
Ghanaianness for a minute, because you've lived in Ghana, you have friends, you know, you have Kofi, you have KSM, you have KSM. What's your favorite food here, locally? What's your favorite food?
Well, first of all, I stopped eating meat about 10 years ago, so I'm a non-meat eater. However, but my favorite food in Ghana is, of course, I love jollof rice.
Aha.
Yeah, I love jollof rice.
Aha.
You know, I haven't been able to quite get behind fufu.
Oh dear, why?
It doesn't work well.
Don't break my heart.
I'm sorry. And
Because you know I'm a fufu girl. Don't break my heart.
what is it? Banku.
Kinky.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Don't worry, I got you. We'll take it one at a time.
Yeah,
you know, I'll
so-
guide you. I understand. It can be a lot in the beginning.
But before I stopped eating meat, because I don't even eat fish, I loved tilapia. The Ghanaian tilapia.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll sit and watch someone eat it and just enjoy it because I know how wonderful it tastes.
Right.
Of course, plantains.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you can never go wrong with plantains,
Yeah,
can you?
you know, and and then
And you're saying here on record, you know, for everybody to know that the Ghanaian jollof is banging, right? Just so everybody
even though
understands.
the Senegalese tell me
No,
that
it's okay. Let's leave it here.
Okay. But I have been able to determine that the jollof rice actually does taste different in each country that
It does,
produces
doesn't
their
it?
version of jollof rice. And the Ghanaian jollof rice is up there. It's definitely up there.
Yes, let's just end the conversation here.
Yeah.
So it's up there.
You know,
We'll take
and,
that. How about music? What's your favorite music now?
Well, my favorite music is old school music, of American old school music,
Right.
which I hear on the radio here in Ghana
Yes.
all the time.
Yeah.
But I love modern West African highlight because the young people are doing it slightly
Right.
different. I mean, it's music that you can never stop moving, you know. So West African highlight, you know.
Right,
So
so where will I catch you hanging out in Ghana?
I'm sorry?
Where can I catch you hanging out in Ghana randomly? Where can I bump into you in? Where?
I'm not sure I can answer that question. I'm not sure I can answer that question. I'm a little over the hill for hanging out with the young people. But we used to go out to this place, and I don't know if it exists. It was along the ocean next door.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because you could go there and you just dance.
Right.
And eat tilapia
Right.
all day long. So, and I don't think that place is there anymore.
Right.
So
I'm not sure myself.
yeah,
It's a
but
shame.
you
I should have
know
been.
that
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So,
Next door. There are a few places.
Ghana is a special place. It is definitely a special place.
And we are happy to have you.
I appreciate it,
And we are happy for all the work that you're doing in Africa. Keep at it. African Rising excites me tremendously.
So all you folks, you listeners, the people who are watching this, just remember that Africans Rising doesn't exist to come in and do your stuff for you.
Right.
It exists to help you help yourself.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and the young people, you know, are prepared to take it on. You know, they do everything: social media, you know, virtual, you know, in live, you know, everything.
Right.
One of the greatest programs that they have that I really like is the Invisible Giants, which is they recognize and they find women who are just doing outstanding things all over the continent, and they recognize them and they tell them that you're an invisible giant because no one even knew that you were there and what you're doing, and they honor them and.
Amazing.
And they give them this beautiful African doll that has your name on it saying an invisible giant.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah, so.
Thank you so much, Marcia.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And let's keep this movement going.
Yes,
let's keep the movement going. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you. Well, viewers, this has been our show this evening. You know, I hope that you take something meaningful with you away from this interview. What I'm taking with me from this conversation is the need to do. You know, that every small activity, action, all, you know, it all adds up.
It has impact.
Right. In the final analysis, it all adds up.
Because change starts at the bottom.
Right.
It doesn't start at
from
the top.
the top.
Yes.
You know, so let's keep moving, let's keep doing for ourselves. And then also learn more about Africans Rising. Let's all, you know, join that movement and keep our Africa the way that we dream it, because it can be that way for all of us. Well, lovely, lovely weekend. Thank you again.
Thank you.
See you next week. Bye.